Hello, this is Kyla Piju, and today we will be talking about why minimum wage should match the cost of living. And today we have two virtual audiences, as well as Jax. Okay, let's get started. How would you feel if you worked a full-time job, 5 to 6 days a week, and still couldn't afford your bills? Groceries, gas, rent, and other bills all adding up for the pay not to match. For millions of workers in this economy, this is the reality. You may not think that this affects you, but 9 times out of 10, you know someone who has worked a full-time job and only been receiving minimum wage. In today's economy, it seems that people are having to pick up 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. The federal minimum wage hasn't increased since 2009, but it also hasn't kept up with the cost of housing, food, or gas prices since then. Today, I'd like to talk to you about, first, why the current federal minimum wage no longer covers basic living costs. Secondly, how this gap is affecting workers across the country. And finally, while raising the minimum wage to match the cost of living would benefit workers, families, and our economy as a whole. The federal minimum wage no longer covers basic living costs. Today, minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, and it hasn't changed since 2009. If someone works 80 hours for 2 weeks at this rate, that equals $580 before taxes are taken out. That doesn't match the cost of a standard 1-bedroom apartment anymore. A standard 1-bedroom apartment starts at $1,300 to $1,800. At this rate, that is barely above the poverty line for one person, and it's not even enough if you're trying to support a family. Think about how much everything has changed, from groceries, rent, gas prices, and necessities. One working 40 hours cannot maintain with one job in this economy. Working as a server, I understand how it feels to live off of a wage where your pay is unpredictable. I feel if minimum wage was raised, people could afford basic needs without having to work 2 and 3 jobs. That will also reduce the amount of people being sleep deprived and being able to get the proper amount of rest. We have 24 hours in a day, and working 20 hours out of the day is not an ideal way of living. Raising the cost will reduce the amount of people being dependent on government assistance as well. Although over 30 plus states have raised their cost of minimum wage, the federal government is the only one who doesn't want to adjust. Most companies worry about job loss, but I think if people have money to not only survive, it will make consumers spend more money, so in the long run, everyone will win. In conclusion, I have shared my thoughts about why the current minimum wage no longer covers basic living, how this affects real workers, and why raising the federal minimum wage would benefit workers and businesses. As someone who works a full-time job, I think it's safe to say you should not only be able to afford to live and not just survive. Minimum wage hasn't changed in 17 years while prices continue to increase. That's unfair for families and workers in this economy. If we as a country value hard work, minimum wage should reflect it. Thank you.